WFYI podcasts are brought to you by Indie Softwater, performing service and repairs on over 30 brands of water systems, plus iron and well filtration systems for residential and commercial properties. Includes water tests conducted on-site, providing real-time information about the water quality. The softest, cleanest water begins with Indie Softwater. More at indiesoftwater.com.
WFYI podcasts are brought to you by Visit Bloomington, Indiana, where Hoagie Carmichael, Booker T. Jones, and John Mellencamp impacted the city and helped it become a music destination. Bloomington is home to a variety of musical artists, live music venues, and hundreds of annual music events. More information at musicbloomington.com.
We're going to take a trip right now. Like we always do about this time.
This is a journey into sound. Break it down.
I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. On this week's show, I'll speak with the world-renowned Indiana musician Jlin. Born Jerrilynn Patton in 1987, Jlin is an acclaimed electronic music producer and composer from Gary, Indiana. Her bold, genre-defying work has reshaped the landscape of experimental electronic music. Jlin's rhythmically dense and emotionally intense style emerged from Footwork, a high-speed dance music rooted in the underground culture of Chicago. But Jlin's sound evolved over time, becoming an unmistakably original voice that transcends categorization. Jlin rose to prominence with her 2015 debut album, Dark Energy. The album was immediately hailed as a landmark in contemporary electronic music. Both The Quietus and The Wire named it Album of the Year, and Pitchfork included Dark Energy in its top 20 albums of 2015. Jlin's follow-up album, Black Origami, further solidified her status as a leading avant-garde composer. The album received almost universal acclaim, with the New York Times, Rolling Stone, NPR, and The Guardian, including Black Origami, in their best albums of 2017 lists. Jlin's latest album, Akoma, has also garnered widespread critical acclaim and features high-profile collaborations with musicians including Björk and Philip Glass. Beyond her solo releases, Jlin's influence has expanded into the worlds of dance, classical music, and performance art. She's composed for the world-renowned Kronos Quartet, and her music has been used by choreographers including Wayne McGregor and Kyle Abraham. Despite her international recognition, Jlin has remained firmly rooted in her hometown, Gary, Indiana. Jlin will join me in a moment, but first, let's listen to a track from her 2024 album, Akoma. This is Jlin with Soda Light, featuring the Kronos Quartet. That was Gary, Indiana's Jlin with Sodalite, featuring the Kronos Quartet. And Jlin is my guest this week. Let's join our conversation as we discuss a formative musical experience during her early life in Gary. I'm really obsessed with the music history of Indiana, and that's a big part of the work I do at this radio station. And there was something I read about you that I have to ask about. I read that as a young person, I don't know if you were a child, teenager, but as a young person, you studied drumming with Johnny Jackson, who was the original drummer of the Jackson 5, a cousin of the Michael and his brothers.
Yes.
Yeah, I know rhythm and percussion is such a huge component of your sound. Tell me about meeting Johnny Jackson and how working with him kind of influenced you as a musician.
When I got to see Johnny play live the first time, I'll never forget. My neighbor, they were in a band together called White Dove, and Johnny was the drummer. And Johnny used to come over to my neighbor's house all the time, and I was in the backyard. So now at this point, I'm probably about somewhere between 12 and 14, and they were throwing a concert in the backyard because our backyard we live in a township. So my parents live in a township, so it was big enough to kind of like to host like an entire concert. So they were playing, and I was watching Johnny warm up one day. I mean, not one day, but I was watching Johnny warm up that day, and I was astounded. I have never seen a person. He was going from like Earth, Wind and Fire to like Teddy Pendergrass to like Marvin Gaye, just Bootsy Collins tracks, but he was just playing without stopping. Like, most people kind of like, you got to stop because the rhythm changes or the beat changes, the tempo changes. Not Johnny. Johnny could play that all the way through like it was like one song. It was crazy. So I had never seen that before. And so I was just standing there just mesmerized watching him play. And so then finally one day he was over my neighbor's house again. So this was like after like maybe shortly after the concert, maybe a month or so later. My mom told me to go get the mail, and she saw me looking at Johnny, and she said, "Why don't you go over there and just ask him, can he teach you how to play drums?" Because she kind of knew. I never said anything to my mom, but she was watching me watch him and be fascinated with him. So she said, "Why don't you go over there and ask him?" Not to mention, he used to be my mother's neighbor when he had come back home from playing with the Jackson 5. When he had they had sent him home or whatever, and so he was my mom's neighbor after she had graduated from college. And so when I went over to the mailbox to go get the mail, I just kind of went over there and asked him, and he said, "Yeah, I'll teach you how to play drum." And so he gave me my first pair of sticks. And then he started teaching me, but we only got like a good 2 or 3 lessons in because shortly after that he was killed.
It's amazing you have such a direct connection to the music history of Gary. Gary has really a mind-blowing music legacy from...
Yeah, it does. It's quite lush.
Yeah, from the Jacksons to VJ Records and all the R&B music in the 50s to all the Eastern European, Serbian folk music. How much of that has influenced you over the span of your life?
Actually, none of it.
None of it? Yeah.
No, not even. Not even. I would say, it's great. Don't get me wrong. It's a beautiful thing. Like, of course, everybody knows about the Jackson 5 and Gary, but that wasn't. I don't even think I would consider that an influence. I just think that was, and it's no disrespect to them, of course, whatsoever. It's just, I feel like this was just a gift that was given to me. So it would have flowed. It would have, it would be fluid anyway. I mean that in the most non-disrespectful way. Of course, I love the Jacksons' music. Are you kidding? Of course. But I wouldn't say that it influenced my sound.
Let's take a break from my conversation with Jlin. and listen to the title track of her 2017 album, Black Origami. I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. That was Jlin with Black Origami. And Jlin is my guest this week. Let's return to our conversation. You have such a unique and individual sound, and there's some things I've learned about you that I think help me better understand maybe your music and your process as a composer. One of those things is that you were a math student at Purdue University. You have a love of math. Is there any connection between your interest in math and your work as a composer and producer?
Yeah, but I think it's not the connection that most, I mean, of course, music and math are very much one and the same language, but I think for me, when I was in high school, I used to use math as an escape because I was getting bullied in high school, and I used to hide in math because I just felt like it was such an escape for me. I could just go in my own mind and just kind of hide there with math, and it gave me peace when I would be solving problems. So music became the same thing when I was in college, when I was at Purdue, because I didn't like my major. I didn't like, I didn't like the school environment, just everything about it just didn't work well for me, which is funny because I teach in universities all the time. But when you don't know what direction you want to go in and you feel overwhelmed, and because, I had been bullied and it was, I didn't have any confidence. So I felt I had no direction. I didn't think I was good at anything. So I just felt like everybody was just kind of passing me by. I was just standing still, So I turned to music. I turned to FL Studio. I used to go in the library and teach myself, music. And at that time, I always tell I tell people, I said I was running away from myself, and I realized I was actually running to myself.
Another thing I learned about you that was really interesting is that Igor Stravinsky is a big inspiration to you.
Yes.
To me, that made a lot of sense because his music is very rhythmically complex. There's dissonances in his music, but it's also very refined, very clean, very graceful. I'm curious how Stravinsky has been an inspiration on you and what you take away from his life and art.
Yeah, so for Stravinsky, for me, is his meticulousness. I can't get it out only because I'm tired. But his music is so layered. But I love the way Stravinsky taught me how to listen. When I was first started making music, there was YouTube used to have so many jewels, but that they don't have now. Of course, they've had to take them down. But they used to have him in rehearsal, and what he used to do was, like, when he would have to have a whole orchestra, so it's just 88 people in the room, for example, the first day takes him 12 hours, and all he's doing that whole first day is listening to everybody's instruments to get them in tune. So he's not even starting the song. So 88 people is a lot, you know what I mean? So you're as the conductor, you're going against ear fatigue and everything else, right? So he's going around listening to every instrument, tuning how he feels that it should sound. And to me, that just was so inspirational that it changed my way of how I listen to things and how I approach, things. And because I'm an intuitive, because I can't read music, I rely totally on my intuition and feeling. But I also feel like it puts me at the advantage point because it also allows me imagination and innovativeness where I can move fluidly without the restriction of right and wrong.
Jlin, from what I know about your life, family has also been a huge, huge influence on you and your work. Your most recent album, Akoma, had a lovely dedication to your grandmother and your parents. Your mom sounds like a really extraordinary person. You know, she had a successful 9-to-5 job, but I believe she's also a self-published author, an entrepreneur. Sounds like a very creative person. Tell me about the influence of your parents and your family in your life and work.
So yeah, like my mom, she graduated from Spelman, and she was also born and raised in Gary, and graduated from Roosevelt High School. And then, like I said, went to Spelman, graduated from there. Very prestigious HBCU. She was my mother is, she is structured, but she wasn't strict. So she used to actually allow me to exercise like what I was interested in. And I didn't know I was interested in music at that time, like, being young. I didn't discover that until later. But like I said, like it was just, she worked a lot for sure. Like she worked like the first 8 years of my like schooling. So from kindergarten to 8th grade, from to 7th grade, because she retired when I was in 8th grade. She worked a lot. So my 8th grade year, she made up for all of the time like that she missed, because she was always in the East Coast work, and she was between New Jersey and New York, always in meetings, always traveling. And then she worked in Chicago at Nabisco at the time. So a lot of time, like any parent, your job is demanding. You come home, you're tired, you're exhausted, but you still, but she was still providing, still checking my papers. I don't know how she did it. She would still get up at 3:00 in the morning and check my English papers. Like, and she had to be at work at 6. Like, it was crazy. So just like in the midst of all of those things, a lot of times I'm like, God, I'm hoping I can at least be half the woman that she is, because I've watched her climb up so many mountains, so many. Especially at a young age. I admired and and just adored and just aspired and said, God, I wish I could be as strong and just brilliant in her thinking and strategic in her maneuvering, like the way that she was and is even still to this day. So we're very close. So as I got older, like I said, because she was structured, she would, she allowed me to move within a certain terrain of those, the boundaries of practicing, integrity, my character, my morale, my spirituality. So it's very, I was raised up in that. And Gary is also a very, very family oriented town anyway. So if everybody knows everybody. So, and even if you don't know a person, you know somebody who knows that person.
Let's take a break from my conversation with Jlin and listen to her most recent release as a composer. Earlier this year, the Grammy-winning ensemble Third Coast Percussion featured the Jlin composition Please Be Still on their album Standard Stoppages. We'll hear that track now. Cultural Manifesto will return with more words and music from Jlin after this short break.
WFYI podcasts are brought to you by Visit Bloomington, Indiana, where Hoagie Carmichael, Booker T. Jones, and John Mellencamp impacted the city and helped it become a music destination. Bloomington is home to a variety of musical artists, live music venues, and hundreds of annual music events. More information at musicbloomington.com.
I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. My guest this week is Jlin, an acclaimed electronic music producer and composer from Gary, Indiana. Jlyn's music has been praised by Pitchfork, NPR, Rolling Stone, Vogue, and the New York Times. And she's collaborated with artists including Björk and Philip Glass. Jlyn's rhythmically dense and emotionally intense sound emerged from Footwork, a high-speed dance music rooted in the underground music culture of Chicago. Let's return to our conversation as Jlin discusses the influence of the late Footwork producer DJ Rashad. One final influence I wanted to ask you about, I have to ask you about the iconic Footwork music producer DJ Rashad. He was born in Hammond, Indiana in 1979 and died tragically young in 2014. I had a chance to interview DJ Rashad many years ago, and I found him to just be a very kind and generous person.
Yes.
Yeah, you've referred to him as an early mentor in your music journey. Is that right? Tell us about your connection to DJ Rashad.
So when I started making music at the end of 2007, early 2008, and I knew that this was the direction I wanted to go in, and DJ Rashad was on, I reached out to him on MySpace at the time because he had done this track I love called Flash, the remix of Kanye Ye's track Flashing Lights at the time. And I loved his version of it. And I fell in love with it. And so I reached out to him and he said, yeah, he said, hey, give me a call. I told him I wanted to start making, Footwork tracks. And he's like, yeah, give me a call. So I remember getting on the phone with him. He was at work at the time, so he hadn't taken on music full time just yet. So we were on the phone and I just, I introduced myself and I said, I really love your work and I really, I want to get into doing this, but I don't know how do I go about this? You know what I mean? I was just like, what do I do? And so he told me, he said, the first thing I don't want you to do is I don't want you to go out and buy a whole bunch of equipment. He said, because I know some musicians who have the best equipment and sound like and I know some who have the worst of the worst kicking everybody's ass. He said, it's not the equipment, it's you. And that stuck with me really heavy. And so when he said that, I immediately was like, that resonated with me because it's like, it's not the equipment, it's always you. Everything is your in coming out. So, and that just stuck with me. And from that point, so I would send him like things I would be working on. And he used to always say, he would hear my stuff and he's just like, oh man, sis, he said, they gonna have to watch out for you when you come, he said, cause he heard me early and he could hear the potential. He said, oh yeah, he's like, you gonna cause a problem. I wish he could have still been around to see where I'm at now. And so I could thank him and tell him, he really just, his guidance really just has resonated with my spirit throughout the years.
What was it about the Footwork sound? I mean, it's such a unique style of music that has captivated people all around the world. It's, there's a huge scene in Japan and all over Europe. What was it about the music that grabbed you? I mean, you didn't grow up in Chicago where it was, centered at the time.
I think it was something that just resonated in my spirit. And I honestly think it was really it was a lot of things. It was the dance but also went along with the percussion. As being, of African descent, we are such a paradox as a people. And I'm learning that more and more every day because the tighter the box you put Black people in, the more they do. You can never squeeze them out. They are never created. They're never destroyed, ever. It was just energy. So if I ever, came back, just kept coming back, I'd always want to be Black. always. Because we are natural creators, and our first vibration, our natural state is really love. And all of that comes out through all the art we create. This is what we do. And a lot of times, to me, I mean, I would hate us too. If this is every time, it's like, damn, every time we put y'all in a box, y'all bust out 5 times more. Look at Simone Biles. The list goes on and on. It doesn't matter how much you box us, we always bust out. So for me, it's an honor to be Black. But to answer your question, the Chicago sound, like I was very gravitated to it because I hear all that ancestral is modernized, but there's nothing new under the sun. All of that ancestral, from the dance to the music, is very tribal. It's a spiritual thing that's happening.
Let's take a break from my conversation with Jlin and listen to another track from her 2024 album, Akoma. This is Precision of Infinity, featuring Philip Glass. I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. That was Jlin with Precision of Infinity, featuring Philip Glass. Let's return to my conversation with Jlin as we discuss her work in classical music. You're one of the few electronic music producers whose work has been embraced by the classical music world. You've worked extensively with major new music and classical ensembles like Kronos Quartet and Third Coast Percussion. Your latest album features a collaboration with Philip Glass. Last year, Kronos did a couple gigs here in Indiana, and I spoke with David Harrington. They were playing your pieces on their 50th anniversary tour. David was raving about you as a composer. Tell me about working in that world. Is it something you enjoy?
I love it. All the music is related. They're all related. They're not separate. They never have been. There's the illusion. None of the arts, none of the music, especially all these different genres you hear, none of them are separate. They're all related. That's the illusion, which is why people, I'm actually more fascinated when people ask me, so what is it like being on that other side of the world? And I'm like, being on what other side of the world? They're very related. When I hear a classical violin, I immediately hear trap music, I hear R&B music, I hear country music. They're all relatable. Like none of this is separate. It's all, I understand genre for reference sake, but as far as they're these separate entity worlds. No, not at all. They're all in the same cosmic plane. All of them. They're no different. They're all related cousins and siblings, and you got brothers and sisters mixed with cousins in there. It's very, so how I, like for me, I don't find it to be like I'm jumping or I have to adjust like this because I'm moving in classical, or I have to adjust like this because this is electronic dance, or I have to adjust like this because this is meditative. Like, no, they're all one world because they all require the same life force. So it's about, yes, I have a versatility. Yes, I know how to adapt, but I don't have to change because my signature is my growth. So I don't have to change. I love working in all aspects, whether it's classical, whether it's electronic dance, whether it's tribal or whatever, R&B, whatever it is. Like I feel like if I can, I understand what Bruce Lee meant. Be water, my friend. If I can touch it, I can adapt to it. And some people don't like, some people hate it. how dare you come in and mix this, we've had it this way for all these years, and how dare you come in and disrupt? Well, I'm only there to disrupt the illusion, and the illusion is that they're separate. They're not. That's all I'm here to do. They've always been together. They've always been one family. All these genres have been one family. One came out of the birth of the other, the derivative of the derivative of the derivative of the derivative, and this will continue happening. There really is nothing new under the sun.
In 2018, the acclaimed string ensemble Kronos Quartet commissioned a piece from Jlin titled Little Black Book. We'll listen to Kronos Quartet's recording of Little Black Book now. I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. We just heard the Kronos Quartet performing Little Black Book, composed by my guest this week, Jlin. Let's return to my conversation with Jlin as we discuss her work with the Icelandic musician Björk. One last thing before we go, because people will kill me if I don't ask you about this. Your last album featured a collaboration with Björk. She's a hero to so many people. What's it like working with her? What's your relationship with her? And is there more collaborations coming in the future?
Björk is a beautiful person. So is, of course, so is Philip. So that, and Kronos. Björk, and I've worked with Björk before. I did her remix. I remixed for her before. I think it was 2017 or 18. And then, working with Björk is very, she's such a down-to-earth person, like, I think a lot of time, we kind of, when we look at things, or when we talk about people, I feel like a lot of times, and I don't mean to say this, we've become such an idol to worship thing that we don't see people as human. We put them on a pedestal that it's not realistic. You know what I mean? So when I got to work with Björk, it was such a, and as much as a pioneer as she is, but she's such a down to earth person, which is why I love to work. I do love to work with her because when we're having a conversation, she's not the Björk that everybody else sees her as, and I'm not the Jlin that everybody sees me as. We are two artists raw having a conversation. We are two artists raw trying to come up with a plan for a piece, or just real conversations. And I feel like that makes the best work.
I can't thank you enough for taking time to do this. I know you're super busy right now, as you always are. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah. Hope to see you back in Indianapolis sometime too.
Yeah. You probably will. I'll trying to come back this summer before. And then I know I have to come back again in October because we're going to come see family.
That's all the time we have for this week. Thank you to my guest, Jlin. We'll end with Jlin's recent collaboration with Björk titled Borealis. Check out the Cultural Manifesto podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Cultural Manifesto is hosted and produced by me, Kyle Long. Thank you for listening.
WFYI podcasts are brought to you by Visit Bloomington, Indiana, where Hoagie Carmichael, Booker T. Jones, and John Mellencamp impacted the city and helped it become a music destination. Bloomington is home to a variety of musical artists, live music venues, and hundreds of annual music events. More information at musicbloomington.com.